Quantum shifting, the 5D power of instant manifestation and transformation. This is video number 1 in the series, What is Quantum Shifting? Hi, this is Mahadeva of the Thunder Wizard YouTube channel, and this is video number 1 of the Quantum Shifting series. So we're going to be talking about what I've experienced to be the fastest, the most powerful, the most dynamic, the most transformative way of shifting your frequency into what we call 5D. And specifically, what we're going to be focusing on is first understanding the quantum state that we have always lived in, we just didn't realize it. The third dimension is a specific frequency in a quantum state of existence. And in order to shift out of it, we actually have to change our frequency to a completely different quantum state. So in order to do that, we first have to understand what living in a quantum state means, and then we have to learn how to shift to different probabilities. This is a completely new way of looking at the idea of manifestation. Manifestation starts from the assumption that there's a fixed, concrete, physical world that you manifest things into. That has been the third dimensional understanding of reality. Since we're now, as a species, we're now moving into a different understanding and relationship with reality, we can now operate from a quantum state instead of a fixed, concrete, third dimensional understanding of reality. And one of the most important things, one of the most fundamental things about being able to quantum shift is understanding that your past is an illusion. And so when you do quantum shifting, you're able to actually shift into another reality that has a different past, which means you have a different identity. Right? So we're going to unpack all of this. Again, this is just video 1, which is what is quantum shifting, and we're going to go through these topics today, which is 1, what is the quantum state? 2, what is quantum shifting? 3, the entire 3-dimensional Earth frequency is defined by narcissistic devaluation. 4, what is narcissistic devaluation programming? 5, quantum shifting reverses narcissistic devaluation programming. Number 6, what are the steps for using quantum shifting to reverse narcissistic devaluation programming? And number 7, the tools for quantum shifting. So these are the things that we're going to be talking about in this video today. So be sure to watch this entire thing, bookmark it, come back, keep watching it, and anyway, we'll get into it. But first, we have to redefine what reality is. And again, our understanding of reality is based on our perception of the third dimension. Our perception of the third dimension is that we live in a concrete, physical reality that flows through time from past to future. Our continuous interaction and reaction with our present experience of reality is always based on our definition of ourselves, based on our illusion of the memory of our past. So the moment that you stop having a past, you begin to have the ability to shift, redefine yourself, which literally changes the probability that you experience. There's a story that was told to me by somebody that I've known for a long time, and it explains this. Now, this is actually somebody who was experiencing quantum shifting. They didn't realize it. So this was a friend of mine who told me about his mother, who has since passed away, and she was going senile. She was very old and she was going senile. So she had to be put into a home. Now, she, in her life, in this three-dimensional reality that we shared with her, she was extremely abused as a child and was suffering from a very serious mental illness called borderline personality disorder. And among other things, that made her very nasty. She was very nasty, very angry, very upset, and had a big chip on her shoulder because she had been, she'd gone through she'd been very traumatized as a child and in her life. So that's what she was like. Her normal state was that she was very abusive, very angry, very reactive, not a very pleasant person to be around. And she was an old lady, so that made it even creepier and mean and weird. So because she was losing her memory, because she was getting old and she was senile, she would have periods where she would forget who she was. She would forget her name, she would forget her past, she would forget, people in her life. If relatives like her son would come, she wouldn't know who he was or who people were. But the strange thing is that she was a completely different person. She was incredibly loving, very sweet, very nurturing, very kind. And she would, if you sat down with her, she would have long, beautiful conversations with you and listen to you and be kind to you and be loving until she would remember who she was. And once she remembered who she was, which meant she remembered her name, she remembered her past, she then became that very dysregulated, emotionally, psychologically ill, mentally ill, angry, abusive person. She was so abusive she would punch the staff, the nurses and the staff that were there to help her. She would literally physically punch them. And then she would lose her memory. She'd forget who she was, and she'd be fully there emotionally. She just didn't remember her past. So that really typifies what our third dimensional reality is. So take a moment to think about your life. All of the things, especially all the things that you don't like about your life, you don't like about yourself, all the things that you can't do, money problems, health problems, personality problems, success problems, relationship problems. Think about all the things that you know about what happened in your past that may have created that. Those memories, those negative, devaluing programming memories. You're no good, you're never going to make it, the world is evil, everybody's out to get you, false beings of light are trying to trap you. These are all responses to the delusion that you have a past, and that past defines who you think you are, and it defines how you respond. Psychologists would call this your unconscious. Your unconscious makes all the decisions for you. It programs how you respond and how you react. What's the difference between somebody who has an issue in life where they lose all of their money, their business goes down, they lose everything, their dog dies, and they say, you know what, life goes on and I'm able to pick myself up and tomorrow's going to be a better day. And they go out, they create a new business, they get a new relationship, they get another dog, and they're rich and filled with love and success and happy. And then another person, same scenario, they lose their business, they lose their dog, they lose their relationship, and then the next thing you know, they're homeless, strung out on drugs and, robbing convenience stores. What's the difference? They live in the exact same world. In this example, they have the exact same skills. The difference is that one has a different definition of who they are. And that definition of who they are changes the reality that they manifest, which isn't really, again, pulling into reality in our fixed world a life. It's not what's happening. What's happening is that person is in a state of probability. And their belief in themselves that life is good for me. Life always gives me what I want. People like me. I'm successful. I'm lucky. Yep, I had some problems, but you know what? That's the past. I'm moving on. I'm going to create something new, and they're able to do it. They're actually looking at probability states and choosing different probability states. They're happy because their definition of themselves is they're going back to a past that they've created, where they are loved, they are powerful, they live in a loving, kind world. Those are all understandings of their past. So we are going to learn in this series, and today we're going to be talking about what the narcissistic devaluation programming is and how you can reverse that. And when you reverse that, you're actually in a state of quantum shifting. All right, so let's get to the list here. So number one, what is the quantum state? All right, so quantum physics says that reality is not a fixed state. Now, we talk about quantum particles. So these are particles that are subatomic, submolecular. They're quarks and things like that, protons and neutrons. So these are not fixed. And again, you've heard me talk about it. I won't go into a long diatribe, but the experiment of, is light a particle or a wave? Well, light is a quantum particle. So it means it's not anything. It hasn't defined itself. And so you can't measure it that way. So all of the experiments that have been done, there have been numerous experiments throughout the decades trying to prove whether light is a particle or wave. And the end result of those experiments is that light is a particle or a wave depending on the intention of the observer. So the person who's looking at it with the intention to see if light is a particle, light will show up as a particle. If they look at the experiment with the intention to see if light is a wave, light will show itself as a wave. The most recent experiments, which is really key because we need to listen to this part, is that the most recent experiments have proven that light not only is neither a particle nor a wave, but it is conscious and it is a time traveler, which means that things that are in a quantum state are not fixed in linear time. And so what these experiments have proven is that light will create itself as a particle or a wave depending on your observation and your intention. But it will also travel back into time. Again, this is not New Age spirituality talking. These are physicists that are saying this proves light travels back into time and changes the evidence to prove that it has always been whatever it was that you were expecting it to be. If you expect it to be a particle, light goes back into time. It changes the evidence so that it has always been a particle to prove that you were right. So that you could say, see, light is a particle, I can prove it. If you change your mind and you say, okay, let's see if light is a wave, then light will go back into time, change the physical evidence, and leave physical proof that it has been a wave the whole time. So quantum particles are conscious and they can travel back into time, which means that time is an illusion. But the way it behaves is directly connected to the past memory that you have of it. So bear in mind, light itself doesn't have a memory of its past. It creates a past so that you can have a memory. Why? So that it will make sense to you. And now it's fixed in your mind. Light is a wave. How do I know that this experiment proves it? I can go back in time and I can physically prove to you that light has always been a wave. It's always been a wave. It's a wave. I just looked at it. I can see it. It's a wave. It's a wave. It's your perception that you have now created into a reality. This is your life. Your life that you experience as this concrete reality that is based in, I was born in such and such, I'm X amount of years old, this happened to me, that happened to me, that's why I am the way that I am. Your injuries, your illnesses, your physical states, all of that are based in your belief in the past. So your body is in a quantum state. It responds to your expectation. We could get into that, but this isn't a healing video. We'll get into that maybe in some other videos. And my body does that. My body is getting more and more responsive to my ability to shift my quantum state, my quantum shifting. My body is responding to that and doing things it's not supposed to be able to do. So anyway, we'll get into that in some other videos. All right, so that's the quantum state. Quantum state is that everything in the multiverse is in a quantum state. It's an illusion when something becomes concrete and fixed and immovable. That is an illusion. So now, in terms of consciousness, this is something that I just recently saw in a video I put up recently. I put a link to a YouTube video about these most latest findings in experiments that talk about consciousness. That human consciousness is a quantum state. And that, there isn't like in your brain, there isn't like consciousness somewhere located in your brain. That the brain is actually functioning like not a computer, because that's how we've thought of it before, that the brain is like a computer, but it's more like a transceiver that allows you to collapse certain quantum frequencies into a reality. And so what they found is that Earth's gravity has a dampening effect on quantum variability, right? So the quantum state is that everything exists simultaneously, and everything is a potential reality. So I'm sure you've heard of timelines. Timelines is very, I played around with the idea that, we live in timelines, et cetera, et cetera. And I've come to find that doesn't describe it. I'm not going to say that there aren't multiple timelines, because that is a way of explaining things that there is some truth to that. But my experience is that it's not about multiple timelines, because the idea behind multiple timelines is that there's multiple fixed realities with a past, a present, and a future, and you can jump from one timeline to another as though you're switching from one train to another that's moving in different directions. The way that I understand it now isn't that there's multiple fixed timelines with versions of you living out your life. It's more that there are multiple probabilities, and you shift between different probabilities. We can also call this quantum shifting. You do this all the time, but again, because you have a fixed idea of the past, you have a fixed idea of who you are, you have a fixed idea of what reality is. You just keep recreating the same probability over and over again, but in your mind it's a few seconds later. And so it proceeds logically from past to future, because again, quantum particles create a past to fit your expectation. So if you have an expectation of a fixed reality, and here are the rules, and here's who I am, and here's my past, then you're going to keep, like pages in a book, you're going to keep creating the same probability over and over again, just like I said, a few seconds in the future. But that is your quantum shifting. You're not really shifting into different probabilities. You're creating the same probability over and over again. But it's coming from the exact same scenario. So if you change, like in the example, if you change your understanding who you are, your probability changes. Because again, in the example of my friend, his mother, when she forgot who she was in this manifested quantum state, she became a completely different person. And it wasn't like she just now was able to be a little bit kinder. No, she was a completely different person with a full, complete personality that was very deep and very profound. I might come to the conclusion that she was tapping into her pre-Earth incarnation personality. And so there was an entire personality with a complete, the same effects as having a full, complete history. Because you can't have, a huge personality with all different variances if you don't have a perception of an actual history. She didn't remember anything, but she acted like somebody who had been loved and had been successful and been happy her whole life and loved people and had a history of connecting. She knew how to communicate. Now, the personality that would come back when she would remember who she was, she didn't know how to communicate. She didn't understand people. She wasn't able to interact in any kind of coherent way. She wasn't rational. When she forgot who she was rational. She was functional, she was healthy, she was happy. She was a different person. Really, she was just having a different experience from her soul. Anyway, I find that very, very interesting, that whole thing. So the quantum state, again, is that there are infinite probabilities that you bring into reality. Now, Earth has a gravitational field, and what this latest scientific experiments, there's been numerous ones, has just recently come to understand is that Earth's gravitational field has a dampening effect on the quantum probability states. So that what ends up happening is that quantum waves, as they were calling it, would collapse as a result of gravity. So let me explain to you what that means. What that means is that in the third dimension, gravity has the effect of forcing you to choose one fixed reality that collapses. So it collapses the quantum wave into one fixed reality. This is third dimensional Earth. That's why there must be some association with gravity and time. I don't know. I'm not going to get into that, but it's, time. We live in past, present, and future. And that forces us into having one experience in each moment moving forward, and that our past defines our present, which predicts our future. This is just basic runology. I talked about that. If you want to go watch videos of the runes, I talk about that. So living in the third dimension forces us to create one fixed reality. That again, every time you create a fixed reality, quantum particles say it creates a past, which then defines how you will experience it going forward. And you just think it's the same past to future. So if we can tap into a quantum state where our reality isn't forced to collapse into one reality, that means that we have infinite choices on what reality to experience. Now, if somebody's watching it from a third dimensional perspective, their perception of you, if you are in a quantum state, is that you are manifesting. So you manifest a good job, you manifest a good career, you manifest health, blah, blah, blah. But from the quantum shifting perspective, you don't have to go through all of that intensity of manifesting, or, in the law of attraction. The law of attraction has that same assumption that we live in a fixed, concrete universe, and you are attracting to you, into your fixed universe, something that's floating out there and existing. So you're attracting it to you. Again, the thing is that these beliefs aren't necessarily wrong, it's just they're not complete. There's nothing wrong with attracting things to you, but that's just a way of looking at it. My way of looking at it is not, you're not attracting things to you. So there's a quantum probability where you are rich. It's a probability that exists. It's just as real as this one. The only difference is you haven't pulled it into focus and collapsed it into concrete perception. There's a reality where you're poor, where you're sick, where you're healthy, where you're happy, where you're miserable, where you're somewhere in between. There's a great show on Apple TV called Dark Matter, which is, right now as I'm making this video, which is June 20th, 2024. There's that series is really interesting. Go watch that. Very similar. There's infinite numbers. Now they're looking at it as though there's quantum timelines that are existing parallel to each other. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying there's another version of you living out a complete life. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that you are here, but the probability exists, and all you have to do is bring it into concrete manifestation, if you will. But you can change that. You can shift that at any point in time. In fact, you are doing it right now as you speak. The only thing that's that is determining it is your firm belief and expectation that your past happened and that it's real, and therefore it defines you. So that is, again, this is something that's true. Quantum particles, if they want to be something, if light wants to be a particle or if it wants to be a wave, it has to go and create a past that proves that it's always been a particle. But that past is an illusion. But in order for that light particle to act as a wave, for example, just so that I use different words, if that particle wants to act as a wave, it has to convince itself it's always been a wave. So it adopts a past reality that then collapses the probabilities into one, which is light is a wave. Your life is that. So do you want to be completely different? Do you want to have a completely different life? All you have to do, since in the third dimension, reality forces us to collapse the quantum wave into one specific reality, you need to be in a position where you can choose which probability you want to collapse into your reality. And to be able to do that skill I'm calling quantum shifting. All right, so let's see, where are we at now? So what is the quantum state? What is quantum shifting? I just answered that. Number 3, the entire third dimensional Earth frequency is defined by narcissistic devaluation. So this is why, if you want to know why my friend's mother, why she was so miserable, is because she had been narcissistically devalued. So what is narcissistic devaluation? Very simply, narcissistic devaluation is the belief that you do not have value simply because you exist. Now, light, this is, we know this from a spiritual perspective. Light is always associated with consciousness and spirituality because it turns out to be true. I can't prove that in a physics lab, but it is my experience that light is consciousness, and light is joy, light is bliss. So when you're in a blissful state, you don't have an ego attachment to anything. You have an ego attachment when you're unhappy. You can't have an ego attachment and not be unhappy. The more egotistical somebody is, the more attachment they have to how you view them and how people see them. Happy people don't care. If you misunderstand them, they don't take it personally. They go, oh, well, that's not my experience of myself. But they don't need to prove anything to you. They're there for you. They'll try and be there with you where you at. Like when you're with a little kid, you don't try and get that little kid to have a full-fledged, adult understanding of you. A baby, a 2-year-old can't. You're an animal. You're not going to sit down and try and convince your dog, who you are from a human perspective and your job and your career and your reputation. Your dog doesn't care. Your dog just loves you because you exist. Just wants to sit and be with you. Even if you don't feed it for a couple of days, your dog still loves you. Your dog will never stop loving you. The dog loves you simply because you exist. So dogs don't devalue you. Children don't devalue you. But the third dimension is defined by narcissistic devaluation, which says you don't have value simply because you exist. Your value is based on what you bring, what you do, arbitrary physical things about you that benefit me. Your value is based on how you benefit me. This is narcissistic devaluation, and this is what the entire world functions as. And I'm saying this is a frequency. So when people talk about shifting your frequency, what they really mean is shifting outside of narcissistic devaluation. The people who are the most destructive have more narcissistic devaluation. The more abusive somebody is, the less they feel that they have value. A demon, for example, their frequency is so low, they have zero value and neither do you, and they can only feed off of you. Whereas a deity, their only interest is how they can empower you and lift you up, because they're so filled with their own bliss of their own experience that they've got infinite amount of love to give, even if you don't love them. They don't care. They don't need you to love them. They're happy to be there to love you. So, the entire 3D frequency, number 3, is defined by narcissistic devaluation. So number 4, what is narcissistic devaluation programming? So, NDP, narcissistic devaluation programming, I've made that up. And that describes how we stay fixed into one particular experience and perception of life. This particular third dimensional experience, why things don't change, why why your past is your past and you are who you are and you can't ever change that, is because of the programming that is done. Now, just because you're narcissistically devalued, if you don't take that on, it won't affect you. But human beings, we are programmed to survive in a group atmosphere. So in other words, a child, when it's born, in fact, I've shared this in other videos, but there have been numerous experiments throughout the years that prove that the fastest way to kill an infant is to not interact with them. There was a king in England, I'm sure you heard me talk about it before, in the Middle Ages, and he wanted to find out he wanted to find out if Hebrew was the original language, because the theory was in the Catholic Church at that time that left to itself, if human beings weren't taught a language, they would just naturally, spontaneously begin speaking Hebrew because that's God's language, and so that's the original language. So he wanted to find this out. So he got a bunch of orphaned infants, newborns, and he put them on an island, a deserted little island somewhere off the coast of Britain, and he put nuns on there to take care of the infants. And he told the nuns on pain of death that under no circumstances were they to ever speak in front of the children. On top of that, they weren't allowed to interact with the infants. They weren't allowed to pick them up, hold them, make any noise, look at them, interact with them in any way. The only thing that they were allowed to do is to feed them, make sure that they were warm, and wipe their butts. What ended up happening is that all of those infants died very quickly. They didn't die from starvation or from lack of warmth. They died because they weren't being interacted with. So if human beings do not become part of a group, at least in their own mind, they can't create an identity and their body simply stops functioning. So narcissistic devaluation programming is built into us. So the first part of it is we have to be part of a group consensus or we don't survive. So our first and most powerful instinct is to be accepted by the group. Now, if we lived in a world where everybody was spiritual and, all of that, then in order to be part of the group, we would all be meditating and connecting to infinity and we'd live in a heaven. But we don't live in that consensus. We live in a consensus where your value is based on what you bring. So from the very beginning, human beings are programmed to believe that their value comes from what they give to the consensus. You don't have any value just because you exist. As we talk about, little kids. Little kids, we tell them they got to grow up. You got to go out there and be valuable to society. You have to, communism is like this. The individual has no value. It's the state. So your value is only what you bring to the state. So you have no individual value. All right? So that's narcissistic devaluation programming, and it's true whether you're in a communist state or whether you're in, a state where it's all about making money. Your value is based on what you bring to the economy. You have to go work a job. Try living in this world without having a job. The only people that can do that are people who have money. So their value is they already have money and they give that back, and that's what gives them power and value. Your value, if you don't have that, is what your labor, your ideas. You have to go and create money for somebody else, and they give you a pittance of that, and that's your value. You work for me, so I give you money. You don't have any value outside of that. That's narcissistic devaluation programming, and that's what the world functions on. So I have a list here. Let's take a look at what is narcissistic devaluation programming. Narcissistic devaluation programming is the unconscious assumption downloaded into every 3D human from birth. Number 2, NDP's main assumption is based on external arbitrary attributes or actions. In other words, in our society, you can have value if you're beautiful. But then again, people are going to capitalize on that, either, use that to make money off of your beauty or personally benefit from that, sexually or otherwise. Beauty is something to be consumed by somebody in some way. So you don't have value in and of yourself, because if you're not beautiful, you don't have any value. If you're not, right now the way to be attractive is to be skinny and have abs, tiny to curvy figure if you're a woman, and big boobs and small waist and, little poochy butt. That's beautiful now. I know from other, I used to train in West African shamanic drumming, and those Yoruba guys from West Africa, they didn't like skinny white women. They liked what we would consider to be too big, too, unattractive, they're too thick. But they like that because in their world, if you have girth, it means that you have access to resources, which means you're not poor. Right? So it's the same thing, their definition of value that they could consume has to do with their understanding of how to be, how to have wealth and how to have resources. In our world, if you have wealth and resources, you have the ability to go to the gym 6 days a week, you have the ability to diet, you have the ability to go and get surgery and, wear the right makeup and all that, and you happen to be of the right, race and all that. So these are all external things that you don't have any control over, meaning you don't have any value in and of yourself. So the main assumption is based on external arbitrary attributes or actions, what you bring. You're not attractive, but you make money. You're not attractive, but you're physically strong. You're whatever it is. You bring something based on something arbitrary and external. Number 3, NDP does not allow for human consciousness to have inherent worth. So, there's nobody that talks like that. Now, in the past, we had that. in the past, there were people in, when we lived in hunter-gatherer days, there were people that were called shamans, wizards, and they lived on the outskirts of the village, and they didn't do anything. They didn't go out and hunt the animals. They didn't build the huts. Their value came from their spiritual understanding, and so you went to them, and you would bring an offering. You'd bring them food. You'd build them their hut, and in exchange, these beings, these people, would be able to connect on a non-physical level and be able to tell you what the gods were thinking, where the animals are. They had value because of their spirituality. Still transactional because it's the third dimension. So their transaction is they give of their spirituality, and then in exchange for that, they get their resources taken care of. But the main, that number 3, NDP, narcissistic devaluation programming, does not allow for human consciousness to have inherent worth anymore. So this, if you're a spiritual person, you want to be a spiritual practitioner like I have most of my life, there's just not a whole lot of money in that. And this has been a struggle for me my entire life. How do I pay my bills when I want to spend 24/7 meditating, interacting with the spirit? And the only thing you can do at that point is teach. So I've been teaching all kinds of spirituality because that's the only way for me to be able to have external worth to put into the external economy Ponzi scheme. Because this country isn't going to go, oh man, he's a shaman, just leave him alone. No, let him go and interact and go and listen to what he has to say. Not going to do that. Because that in and of itself doesn't bring a lot of value to our third dimensional understanding of reality. Let's see, am I here? Yeah. So, number 4, your value is based on how much narcissistic supply you can deliver to 3D Earth. So narcissistic supply is a great phrase. And I believe it was coined by a psychiatrist, or maybe he's just a psychologist named Sam Vaknin. But it's a well-known phrase. So a narcissist is somebody that is an extreme version of every human being on the planet who has a transactional relationship with the world. An extreme version where they use people, and it's very clear they only use people for in ways that they can selfishly benefit from. And so they only have people in their life that serve them in that way, and this is called narcissistic supply. So if somebody is a narcissist in the sense that they want to be admired, because of their beauty, for example, then they would surround themselves with people who ogle them and throw money at them and give them praise and adulation for how beautiful they are. So the narcissistic supply would be people, looking at them, lusting after them. If it's somebody who's a bodybuilder and they're a complete narcissist about their, and they take steroids to the point where they get huger than the average person, so their narcissistic supply is people being afraid of them or looking at them same kind of way. If you're a cult leader, then the narcissistic supply is the people worshiping you. If you're a businessman, then the narcissistic supply is the power you get from being able to tell people what to do and command people and make things happen. So narcissistic supply is anything that feeds your narcissistic ego, which again, you are feeding off of external things that have nothing to do with the value of consciousness. It's just based on physical or arbitrary things. All right, I hope I explained that. So narcissistic devaluation programming does not allow for human consciousness to have inherent worth. Number 4, your value is based on how much narcissistic supply you can deliver to 3D Earth. Paying money, paying interest on a car loan. I know it sounds like money, but money is a made-up object. It's the idea. Banks aren't making money off of money. They're making they're profiting off of you giving your power to them. Because it's not like they lend you, if you want to buy a $40,000 car, they don't lend you $40,000 and say, just pay me back. Maybe give me a couple dollars so I can pay some administrative fees. Okay, just pay me a little bit more so I can pay myself and others. If that were the case, then borrowing $40,000 wouldn't be a big deal. But, just like the mob, when you borrow from them, they compound the interest and it just becomes enormous. And what was a $40,000 car becomes it's $60,000 3 or 4 years later. It's compounded. That is what is their narcissistic supply. You are now, they own you. Same thing with buying a house. The bank owns your house. I've talked about it before, but it's the craziest thing if you think about it. You buy a house, meaning you go to the bank and you say, hey bank, there's this house over here that I want, and it costs $500,000. And the bank says, okay, we can buy that for you. How much money do you make? And what other assets do you have? And you say, oh, I make $100,000 a year. And the bank says, oh, okay, so I can string that out for 30 years, and you'll pay me a huge amount of your income in order, and I will add interest on top of that, so that at the end of those 30 years, I will make an absolute buttload of money off of you. You will be indebted to me that whole time. Now, halfway through that payment, 15 years into it, if you stop paying me, I'm not going to then take the house, sell it, and give you what you paid me so that you're not out anything. And I still have the house and all of its worth, and I still have the money on top of that, and I'm good. And maybe I make a little on top of that. The bank doesn't say that. The bank says, 15 years into it, 20 years into it, if you stop paying that payment to me every month, I not only have all of the money that you've paid me over those 20 years, I not only have that plus all of the interest that I took from it, I also have your house, and I have the ability to sell that and get its entire worth that is now increased over the years. And so I have the ability to make far more money off of you not paying this than if you ever did. Borrowing money from the bank isn't like somebody lending you money and then just trying to get even and making a little bit more. Your entire life is over to them, and if you don't pay up, you lose everything. That's why it's called a mortgage. It means a death grip. This is narcissistic supply, because we know that money is just a concept. The supply comes from them owning you. You now have to work that crappy job you don't want to work. You now have to work overtime. You now have to get a second job because the bank owns you, and they own your essence. They are narcissistically feeding off of your essence. The money is just a symbol for that. Does that make sense? So your value, number 4, is based on how much narcissistic supply you can deliver to 3D Earth. 5, narcissistic devaluation programming Earth, 3D Earth, demands you deny personal desires in favor of NDP consensus. So this is just a fancy way of what I've been saying from the beginning, which is you've incarnated for 2 choices. You only have 2 choices in this life. You have to choose between making other people happy, which is another way of saying being a source of narcissistic supply to the consensus, the government, the banks, religion, family. You have to be a source of narcissistic supply to them, get their approval, and seek after that. That's one path. The other path is going after your soul, becoming individuated, where you become self-empowered, and your sense of worth comes from your connection to yourself and to the spirit at large. Those are your only choices. And you are somewhere, you think that there's a spectrum. This happens all the time when people come to me and they want to know, I teach them how to find their perfect career. And so they want to know, is there an in-between way where they say, well, I'll work this job for 10 years and then I'll save up money and then I'll go do what I really want. And I said that those 10 years, it's never going to happen. Those 10 years are going to turn into 20 and 30 and then the rest of your life. There's never comes a time when you've saved up enough money, giving away your soul, giving away narcissistic supply. There, you can't save anything. The money that you think you're saving, the amount of personal energy that you put into making that crappy salary, which you have to do the job you can't stand, there's nothing of you left. This is why people spend their money on entertainment. They spend their money on alcohol, drugs, porn, gambling, going on, vacations. They spend all their money because they're just trying to get something back for themselves. So the idea that you're going to just save up and then you'll be okay, and then do what your soul wants, it doesn't work that way. Because again, the whole idea of time is an illusion. So the idea of I'm going to take this much time and put it into something other than my soul means that you're just going to walk away from your soul. So you have two choices. You can either work towards your soul or work against it. And now you understand that when you're trying to get the approval of the world, you're actually giving away narcissistic supply to the consensus, which could be anything. The college, universities now, there's a certain way. If you don't think a certain way, you're not part of the in crowd. You're not hip, you're not woke. It wasn't like that when I was a kid. It was some of that, but not like it is now. The government, if you don't get you can't work. That's narcissistic supply. You do what we tell you. You let us control you, or we won't let you survive. They're saying you give us narcissistic supply, or we won't allow you to live. It's that simple. People lost their jobs, all kinds of stuff, simply because, forget about all the other things associated with it. They just didn't want to do what they were told. They were told, if you don't do this, you can't work. You can't make money. You'll die. So that's, again, you give us narcissistic supply and we'll allow you to live. Anyway, you get where I'm going with this. So your value is, number 4, is based on how much narcissistic supply you can deliver to 3D Earth. Number 5, narcissistic devaluation programming Earth demands that you deny personal desires in favor of NDP consensus, which is what I've been saying, is that your soul desire, you can't do that and also be giving narcissistic supply to the world. So the theory is that, the theory of the NDP programming says if you don't do what we tell you, you won't survive. If you don't let us control you, if you don't feed us with your worship, with your money, with your mind, with your desires, if you don't give all that and give to us the ability to control you and feed off of you, then you won't be able to find the resources to live. What I've been teaching people, for the past 15 years or so, is that if you only act on the desires of your soul, then the universe will supply you with all of your resources. Somebody misquoted me and said you said if you do this, the universe will throw money at you. And I didn't respond, but that's not what I said. I don't think I've ever said that. If I have, I don't remember it. But what I am saying is that the universe will always make sure that you have your needs met. You will have resources, and if resources means money, you will have money. The universe will give you, the quickest way to get your resources and needs met so that you can feed the universe. So you're either feeding the universe or you're feeding the narcissistic 3D consensus. You have to feed one or the other. If you feed your soul, since your soul is infinite and connected to the infinite spirit of the universe, then you're feeding the universe and you're feeding everybody else's soul, whether they realize it or not. The people in government who said, if you don't get we're not going to let you work, their thought is you're not feeding into us, but the truth is if you said no, I'm gonna do what is best for me, you're actually feeding their spirit, even if their 3D mind doesn't catch on to that. So the understanding is you feed your soul by living what your soul wants to do, and not give yourself away to feed the narcissists and the narcissistic programming. Then the universe has to give back to you, has to make sure that you have all of your needs met. All right, so that's number 6. Individuals who value consciousness over materialism are eliminated. What I mean by that is that the 3D, that is at least what you've been threatened with. There used to be a time when there was no such thing as government, there was no such thing as money, there was no such thing as taxes and laws, and people lived in tribal communities, and they went around, and the earth fed them. And nobody really owned any one plot of land. You traveled around and followed the herds, and in the seasons you moved around, and you learned to interact with other tribes, and maybe skirmishes broke out, but for the most part, nobody owned anything. Nobody owned any land, and everybody got what they needed. And that isn't the case now. That basically they were homeless, but they just simply gathered what they needed from the ground, or they hunted, from the animals, and it met all of their needs. That's being homeless. Try being homeless now and going out and hunting or fishing. You won't be able to. You have to get your resources from the approved sources. You have to get your resources from the stores. You have to get it from people who make money off of you. You can't just go and get it yourself. Now, it used to be easier to do that. You could live off grid, but there's been an active program you haven't heard about, but there's been very active measures taken against people who live off grid. And in one case in Oregon, what's happening is that the government is using satellites to see who is gardening in their backyard. So in other words, if you're not a farmer who has to go and get government approval to farm and pay taxes and zoning and all that kind of stuff, if you just want to, in your half acre of your backyard, create a garden so that you can have your own fruits and vegetables to eat, the government comes and knocks on your door and says, you can't do that anymore. And you go, what are you talking about? It's my own backyard. I can do whatever I want. They say, no, you can't. You're farming. You're illegally farming. I'm not farming. I'm not doing this and going and selling it. I'm just feeding myself. So you can't do that. You're taking water away from the farmers. So you have to stop. And you don't hear about it, but it's happening all over, happening in Oregon. Why? Because if they control the land, they control the food. If they control the resources, they control you. This is narcissistic devaluation programming. And this is the consensus. This is the world. So NDP Earth demands you deny personal desires in favor of NDP consensus. Number 6, individuals who value consciousness over materialism are eliminated, meaning that eventually when they consolidate the power, they will eliminate your ability to be independent. That is the plan. That is the goal. Number 7, the goal of narcissistic devaluation programming is to create a global Ponzi scheme fueled by global slavery. If you follow what I've just said, I'm just telling you the stuff that I've seen and the stuff that's readily available to those who have the ability to find out the truth. It's a Ponzi scheme. What is a Ponzi scheme? A pyramid scheme. It means that the people on top, everything is funneled to the people on top, and the people on the bottom end up with nothing. So, that's the world. That's how our society is completely built. Anyway, let's keep going. Number 8, the only way to reverse narcissistic devaluation programming is by creating new reality through quantum shifting. So if you're able to quantum shift, nothing can control you. Nobody can control you. because now you are outside of the third dimensional frequency. So the weakness of the powers that be that seek to devalue you and use you as narcissistic supply, the weakness is that they are trapped in the third dimension. They are trapped in the past, present, and future collapse, because on Earth, because of gravity, that's, scientists are saying because of gravity, but I'm going to say it's because of the frequency as well. But the frequency of there isn't enough, which is, narcissists aren't people who think they're God. The truth is that narcissists are incredibly empty. There's a black hole inside of them. And that's why nothing is ever enough, because their assumption is that they're not good enough and the universe won't ever provide for them. So that's why they have to feed off of you, because without you, they can't function. They can't do anything on their own. They need to feed off of your life force. So the only way to reverse narcissistic devaluation programming is by creating new realities through quantum shifting. Quantum shifting, in order to quantum shift, you start from a completely different assumption, which is the opposite of NDP, which is NDP says you don't have any value in and of yourself. Your value is what you can provide to me, either energetically, physically, or otherwise. The opposite of that is that I have value simply because I exist. And my existence has not just some value, it has infinite value. And so the more I tap into my infinite spiritual identity, the more power I have, the more self-sufficient I have. So it's individuation. So the goal of all true spirituality and psychotherapy is to become individuated, meaning you don't need to gain your value from anything outside of you or anything arbitrary like your looks. You have value simply because you exist. And that, again, we talked the two people, they both had major life problems, and one of them picked themselves up and went on and created a beautiful life, and the other one didn't. It's because the assumptions were different. The person who's able to pick themselves up and be happy and create a beautiful life regardless of the tragedy is somebody who's individuated. They get their power from within. The kingdom of God is within. The person who gets their power from outside, so now they are part of the NDP programming, or the ND programming, they don't have anything in their minds to give back, so therefore nothing will come to them, so they go further down. They end up alcoholic, living on the street, robbing convenience stores, because they don't have any power within themselves. Now, the ability to have power within yourselves is a choice. It's just that simple. You choose to have the power, but you have to be willing to let go of the fantasy that you will gain love and approval from the NDP third dimensional frequency. All right, so that is number 4. What is narcissistic devaluation programming? Number 5, quantum shifting reverses narcissistic devaluation programming. That's what I just said. Number 6, what are the steps for using quantum shifting to reverse NDP? That is another video. There's 11 steps to that. These are 11 steps that I've put together. What I've done is I've looked at, okay, what is it that I'm doing? I talk about all this stuff on the channel. Quantum, I'm now using the word quantum shifting. It sounds great, but what does that mean? How do I practically put that into my life? So I spent time and I really meditated on it, and I physically went through my days on what it is that I'm doing to be able to increase in this ability to quantum shift. And I came up with 11 separate, specific actions that I take on a regular basis. And so we're going to make a video about that. So what are the videos? Let's see here. So we've got a list of videos here. We've got 7 videos explaining this. This is what you're watching right now, which is video number 1, which is what is quantum shifting. Video number 2 is reversing narcissistic devaluation programming. Video number 3 is guided interdimensional meditation for discovering your 5D quantum self. Video number 4 is downloading your 5D deity avatar identity program. Video number 5 is living your 5D avatar identity. Video number 6 is what are the specific steps for using quantum shifting to reverse NDP. And as I said, I've come up with 11 of those, which I will put into that video. And then video number 7 is how to choose your perfect probability and collapse it into your perception. So that's what I talked about in the beginning, is that what scientific research is finding out is that we live in a quantum world where there's infinite probabilities, but gravity forces the brain to collapse the quantum wave into one specific reality that it perceives. So the whole point of the brain is to be able to take all of these quantum probabilities and create one reality out of it. So if we just don't do anything and we don't evolve, then we are a slave to the frequency collapsing a specific reality that's outside of our choice, which is why people think that they are simply victims of circumstance. That's why we believe that, past, present, and future, that we are slaves to that. That's why we believe in old age and death and, all of these, destiny and God's will. We believe in things outside of us deciding our reality. But what's happening is that the third dimensional frequency, or in the case of these experiments, gravity, forces the brain, that the consciousness of the brain is looking for a specific reality to collapse into a perception. So your brain is trying to perceive one specific reality with a specific past and a specific future. And so the difference between somebody who's evolving is that they can quantum shift. They can choose which reality they want to collapse into their perception, as opposed to the average unevolved 3D person who is a slave to whatever they experience their brain collapsing into a reality for them. Does that make sense? So what we're doing when we evolve into 5D is we're learning how to do something we're always doing. We're always doing it all the time. We're continuously manifesting and collapsing a specific reality with a specific past and future. We're doing it all the time, we just don't know it. So we're a slave to it. But the 5D person has the ability to choose. Oh, this probability is nice, let's make this a reality. And you can change your reality from moment to moment. So that's why, I called it the 5D power of instant manifestation. It's not really manifestation, it's choosing an already existing probability that hasn't been brought into concrete reality yet. Okay? So I hope that explains everything. Let's see here. Yeah. So these are the videos that are coming up. This is video number 1. This one I'm uploading to the YouTube channel. But if you want to get all of the other video courses, then you go here to, let's see, is it this one? Yeah. So if you want to get all of the video courses, then you go to thunderwizard.com and you click on shop, and you will see all the quantum shifting videos available, and I'll make them individually available so you can buy them one at a time. You can buy number 2 and then buy number 3 and all the way up to number 7. So if this works for you and this sounds like something that appeals to you, you can go ahead and get started with video number 2. I will make that available before I upload at least these 2. You can go to thunderwizard.com and click on shop. Let's see, do I have that here? Yeah, so if you click on shop, right, you'll see shop, Thunder Wizard, and then you'll see quantum shifting number 2 will be sitting there, and you can get it there in the shop. And then all the rest of them will be available for you. And we'll keep talking about it on the channel, and there will be more and more. And if there's enough response to this, if this is something interesting to you, because again, I'm going to go off of you. If you guys don't respond to this, I will stop. I will stop making these videos, because I'm not going to waste my time if people aren't interested. If you are interested in this and you want to keep going with this, I want to work with people who are serious about it. And if that's the case, then I will make another live group. Now, right now we have a live group. Give me a second here. Let's bring this up here. Right now we have a live group for people who are working with the interdimensional meditation. And so I've got a live Zoom discussion group with people who are doing that. But if you are serious about this quantum shifting and you want to get into some practical day-to-day stuff and working with other people, working with me, asking me questions, I will create another live Zoom group just for quantum shifting. But that's only if there's enough interest. So it's up to you guys. If you want it, the way you can show me is by getting the videos and doing them, talking about it on the video comment sections, and that will encourage me to keep making these videos. And then I will, if there's at least 10 people who are ready to pull the trigger on the live Zoom discussion, I will create an affordable live Zoom discussion group where we talk about our experiences, and we will experiment together with how to do this quantum shifting thing, which is really how to shift into 5D. So that's it. I hope this has been helpful for you. You know what to do. Go to thunderwizard.com and check out the shop. Of course, everybody can subscribe here. I recommend that. There's plenty of people who were subscribed to the 90-day. They've gone all through it and they're looking for something else. So the next obvious step to that would be quantum shifting. All right. And of course, YouTube at Thunder Wizard if you're watching this on another platform. That's it for me. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. Remember, you do have value simply because you exist. And please understand that the entire universe was created simply for your pleasure. And now that you understand this idea of quantum shifting, you can literally imagine the perfect reality because it already exists as a probability in the quantum state. And you can collapse it into your perception. And that's what my hope is, that we all learn how to do that. Having said that, I love you, my friends. Thank you for showing up. Please be good to yourselves, and I will see you all very soon. Please take care.